Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Right now, we have Michaela Hutchinson with us, who works on runtimes and tools as a game programming developer. Is that kind of, or please clarify?
Yeah. So I work on IDEs, compilers, runtimes, specifically Xamarin, Visual Studio for Mac. And the Mono runtime, which is the runtime that powers the C# scripting in Unity.
Okay.
So these tools are used a lot for making games, but they're also used for making other things as well.
Really?
But yeah, I've been passionate about games, about game development since as long as I can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been interested in the application of those tools to games. So I go to GDC, I do game jams, I have side projects.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. So within these different runtimes and tools, how did you land on what you're currently working on right now? How was that pathing?
So it happened through a program called Google Summer Code, where they sponsor students to work on open source software.
Okay.
And I've actually been involved with that ever since. It was 2005 I did it first, working on a drag and drop web designer for ASP.NET. And I'm actually still working for the guy who mentored me in that. He offered me a job out of college. And,
wow.
And yeah, it's been a kind of meandering path, all things that are related, but lots of different projects. Let's see, I've worked on iPhone and Android tools, web tools. I've worked on demos for the PlayStation 3, worked with Vita dev kits, all sorts of bits and pieces.
Right. So what are some of your favorite platforms to develop for?
I am very much a fan of the PC. That's kind of what I grew up on, and I like it because it's so. There's so many development tools that are available on that, and it's easy to reach a lot of people through it.
Okay. Yeah, cool. That makes sense. So what made you decide to come to GaymerX East this year?
Well, first of all, I live in Boston, which is about a 4-hour train ride away, so it was pretty convenient. And secondly, a lot of folks who I met at GDC and PAX East this year were going to be here, and I really wanted to come and see them again.
Right.
And also meet more folks. But yes, some of the people I came to see are from New York, and others have come even from Seattle and other places on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially since there is a Gamer West. So it's nice to have people realize that the East Coast does have conventions too. Please come to PAX and so on. So in specific, I know that there's a lot of people who would easily say oh, math or programming is totally not a strong suit for me. What kind of advice would you be giving to someone who is interested in game development, or at least the type of assisting with creating these tools to help these engines obviously work better in the long run for a vast majority of people? What kind of advice would you give someone who wants to get into that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I don't actually have a formal background in computer science. It was something I picked up on the side, and it was mostly through being interested in learning and teaching myself things. And I'm one of those people who learns by trying to do something and figuring everything out as I try to do it.
Right.
Not so much learning for its own sake. And I know not everyone works. Not everyone learns the same way, but I definitely found that just by starting projects and figuring out whatever I had to do to get them done, that's how I've learned, and being insatiably curious, I'd say. Also, open source software is pretty awesome. There's a ton of amazing code out there, and you can look at code that's been written by teams of professionals, and you can see very experienced developers, and you can see how they work together. You can go on GitHub and look at pull reviews and see how how the code review process works, and often many of these developers with open source projects are willing to mentor people who'd like to contribute. There's definitely a lot of that in sort of the tools and libraries space, not so much, like open source software doesn't tend to be such a big thing in games specifically, because I think a lot of people are trying to make games rather than
the tools to make the games.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, tools is something that I enjoy because I like making things that help other people to do things. I actually like that more than actually like making games themselves. I figured that out fairly early on in my career, and I'm sure there are other people out there who enjoy that too.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that's really interesting to me. I like helping people be able to do their jobs, so this is a very interesting like path to see that is a possibility within this community. So more generally, you obviously said that you really love PCs and gaming on them in particular. What is the first PC game that you remember playing, or maybe like seeing advertisements for, and you're like, oh, I want that one, but you never were able to play it?
Oh, the wanted but never able to play. I'm not sure. I can remember one of the first ones I played, which was Terminal Velocity back in '96, I think.
Okay.
Came as part of my family just got a PC for the first time when I was like 12, and it came with a pack of games, and it was it was definitely, there wasn't the same amount of choice and variety and diversity in games then as there is now. I think it's really great how like there are so many more indie game developers, and many more people have that opportunity to make games.
Right. So how do you view, obviously you said that like games were much more like, you know, these are these that came out this year, and because they have the marketing pull to put it in magazines or put it in your local game store, they're the ones that get bought. How do you see that sort of thing, or just in general with the gaming community, changing within the next 5 to 10 years? What are some things that you are keeping tabs on personally?
That's a tough one. I'd say I mostly find out about games that I want to play through word of mouth from friends, and I think that's becoming more and more important with like streamers and Twitter and recommendations on Steam and all that kind of stuff. And I think we're going to just see things tending more in that direction. It's difficult to predict where things are going to go,
of course.
It's nice, but I think that's here to stay.
Kind of play fortune teller and try to figure out, because then you can go back 10 years ago, look, I talked about this. And then if you didn't and you were wrong, no one has to see it. It's great.
I should just predict like 10 different things, and I can go back and pick the one that was right.
And then just delete all the other ones, No, that totally works. Are we good? Okay, just making sure. So in general, is there any sort of advice that you want to give to people who want to join this community? What kind of key points should they keep in mind when they're interacting with other people, or when they want to maybe work for either a bigger studio or start their own? Is there some like key lessons that you've learned, and maybe mistakes or stumbles that you want to let other people know not to go for, or?
I'd say it's really important to meet people and make connections, and even if it doesn't lead to anything right now, just knowing that person years down the line might make a huge difference. So definitely coming to events and talking to people, and also things like game jams are a great opportunity to meet folks. And also, like, you don't just have to like get to know the important people, but meeting other people who are at the same stage as you, who will then go on to also become like, they will move forwards in their careers, and you'll have that relationship and that friendship going forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Treating people like humans who deserve respect because of what they work on and what they're passionate about. That kind of transcends every industry, and I like that point of view a lot. Is there, so you talked about your current project a little bit, and it seems a little bit abstract for me personally because I don't really fully understand the programming or the tool aspect of assisting Unreal Engine. Could you like just dive into that
Yeah.
a little bit?
Okay, so I have a side project which is a plugin for the Unreal engine, which is one of the big game engines that allows developers to write their game code with the C# language.
Okay.
And the C# language is pretty popular. It's the main language used by developers using Unity.
Okay.
It's also pretty big in all sorts of like web and mobile app development too.
Right.
I've been working on C# tools for the last 10 years. I really like the language. I really like the way it's developing. And disclaimer, I work for Microsoft, and but I really like the language, and so apparently do a lot of other people. So,
Right.
and I also really like Unreal Engine. So enabling people who want to use Unreal Engine to use that language to write their games, which is more accessible than C++. But so Unreal Engine has two options for writing your game code. There's C++ and there's Blueprint, which is a sort of drag and drop scripting language. And C# is somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Like it has some of like the text-based programming and refactoring tools and so on that you get with a textual programming language that you don't get with Blueprint, which makes it easier to organize and structure your code.
Right.
But it's a lot easier to use, a lot safer than C++.
Okay. Cool. That's really interesting to know. I really appreciate you coming by and giving us a few minutes of your time and sharing your expertise, because I think it's not commonly thought about experience. Like, of course, I develop games, I program games. Well, what about the people who make the tools that you can program on in the first place? So thank you very much for giving us a little bit of your time this weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.